Bun and Rick did record with John Lennon in 1980 in August. It was right after Tom left the band or was pushed out of the band, or both, to be honest with you. Rick and Bun were called. Jack Douglas was the one, obviously, that gave them the call. They went through Ken Anamani. I was able to see because Ken has everything. Like I put in the book, Ken obviously was their manager from the very beginning. He was a big fixture in the Wisconsin music scene. He owned the factory, which was the place where Otis Redding was supposed to play the night he crashed into the lake. And Ken has literally like the limo bills for Bun and Rick. It's another very Cheap Trick thing that as their band, Cheap Trick, is falling apart, they get a phone call. Jack calls Ken for them to play on Double Fantasy. They go. Bun and Rick, especially, are the two biggest music nerds of Cheap Trick, like card carrying. I mean, Bun obsessively loves drums, obsessively, he's a taper, taped Cheap Trick, taped other shows. Rick, of course, is the most famous guitar collector known to man.
Oh
Uh,
yeah. How many
and
is he up to now? Do we know the
I don't
number?
even know. I guess there was a website, but he also brought
Like
John Lennon after
300
the.
plus.
Yeah, he actually brought John Lennon after the session. He brought them a hammer guitar, but they get the call. They had just got back from Toronto, where Pete Comida was basically flown out to replace Tom. They didn't make any announcement about that. They played these shows. They get the call. Rick has always joked that Dax, who now plays drums, was born during this time, which he was. So Rick has always said that Karen, his wife, has given him a hall pass, which I jokingly said I don't think Rick understands what hall pass means. That's not what a hall pass means to play with John Lennon. And given the fact it's a sex joke, I think Rick would absolutely appreciate it. I just don't think he understands when he says it. To quote was the Princess Bride, the words don't mean what you think they do.
Yeah.
But they play on two songs. Bun has told the story that they had just come back from Toronto. Bun, openly talked about, smoking weed back then. So him and John are smoking a joint as Rick is playing a solo. And I guess John had said something to the effect of, I wish I'd had this guy on Cold Turkey because Eric Clapton, A, was addicted to heroin, and B, like didn't really, deliver the solo. Of course, Rick and Bun was reiterated this, loves to tell that story as if he was in the room because what ends up happening after they're not on the album and John Lennon gets shot, it becomes another blessing and a curse thing because John Lennon I don't think was aware of Cheap Trick. I think Jack Douglas was, John Lennon's kids were, but Bun has told the story. Rick had a guitar and still does. I think I've seen it in pictures that says Day Tripper, and John Lennon was like, "What is that?" And he's like, "That's my Day Tripper guitar." He's like, "We had a cover of Day Tripper on Found All the Parts, the new disc, 1980 EP. Day Tripper, it's on the charts," and he had no idea. So
Yeah.
the story that came out later was like it became much like all the grunge bands and Kurt Cobain name checking Cheap Trick. It became almost like a weird badge of honor, like John Lennon called us in. But at the same time, that isn't quite what happened. I mean, Bun he got autographs from John Yogo, which he asked Jack if he could do. And John, I think, wrote "Thanks for the hop," like a play on the Bunny thing. And of course, he signed it with the famous John Lennon caricature signature, which Rick also has been doing. He's never said that that's where he got it from, but it probably is. He signs with his little cartoon of himself. Rick does. Then John and I think Rick went out. Bun had said that he had to go do his laundry, so he wasn't really sure what happened afterwards. They probably got really drunk. This was obviously, 1980. And then, of course, they're not on the album. And then, John is shot, which Rick had talked about. He was watching the Monday night game where Cosell reported it. He was watching it in the strip club, he said. And that was it. So they had to, it must have been also very weird. Like, Cheap Trick is kind of coming apart. They're eventually going to replace Comida with John Brandt, and they're probably like, we got to play with our idol who is now dead, and we're not going to be on this album. So it became like again another Cheap Trick, mythology, like how that went about, how did it really happen. Greg Prato did a book on John Lennon that I used where he talked a bunch specifically about the sessions. But yeah, different, and it's a very Cheap Trick thing. Different stories of that, that Rick heard him say that about Cold Turkey, which he didn't, because of course that is the message in that story is that Rick would have been better on Cold Turkey than John Lennon. And Cold Turkey is like one of Cheap Trick's earliest covers. They love that. It's 100% like what their sound is kind of founded on, crunchy and subversive. Robin, before they started writing on their own songs, could do a perfect imitation of almost anybody.
The
That's what
man
that.
of a thousand voices.
Yeah, it was funny because the story about why they didn't appear on the album was that John apparently had said something like, "This sounds too much like Cold Turkey," which had Cheap Trick known that, or had Bun and Rick known that, that would have been the ultimate compliment, right? I mean, that's exactly that's everything they would have wanted to hear.